Hi, this is Larry Levin, and welcome to another edition of Cop Talk. I'm here with our editor-in-chief emeritus, Bob Cohn. Hi, Bob.
Pleasure to be here.
And I should say our esteemed producer, Aggie Gallagher, but welcome, Aggie, who's on the other side of the camera. Bob, so now the Israel government is trying to solve its housing crisis and just gave approval to a long-standing application to build another 1,600 units in East Jerusalem in the Haredi neighborhood of Ramat Shlomo, and is now looking at another 2,000 units in East Jerusalem as well. How's the government balance its need to satisfy the legitimate housing shortage concern while not inflaming the international crisis that's brewing in the United Nations?
Well, certainly the decision to expand these settlements that you described is going to re-trigger hard feelings between the United States and Jerusalem, no doubt. On the other hand, this housing demonstration that's now involves close to 200,000 people in 12 different cities includes both liberal people from Tel Aviv and the settlers who have come together in an odd alliance to address a real problem.
Yeah, exactly. On the international side, Netanyahu, who poo-pooed Obama's speech in which he advocated for a return to 67 borders, is now signaling his support for that result. What's going on with Netanyahu?
Well, I think it's a chess game, and it was his move, and what he's trying to do, I think, is to position Israel at the United Nations so that there is an alternative position to simply a unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state.
So how does that work while you're saying, oh, let's build more housing in East Jerusalem? How do you achieve both ends of that equation?
You have to visualize Israeli politics as a big garden hose. And you step on this part of the garden hose and the water swells up here, then you let it up a little bit, and then you put your foot on the other part of the garden hose. Every time a concession is made to the left, an equal and opposite one is made to the right. And all prime ministers of Israel, Labor, Likud, and Kadima, have followed that pattern.
So given the stresses of both the domestic and the international situations, if I made you place a bet, would you bet on the Netanyahu coalition being in power 6 months from now?
I will bet hesitantly that it will stay in power because the alternatives don't seem feasible. I don't see Kadima and Labor being able to form a majority based upon the international climate.
I'm going to disagree with you only because I think Labor will bail based on the domestic situation. And I think the problems are so overwhelming, not only with housing, but education, that Labor will take a firmer stand on those issues. But it remains to be seen.
I think it's healthy for us to disagree.
Oh, I sure hope so. I disagree with that. Now, the U.S. is also raising its level of rhetoric about Syria right now. And so what do you think will happen both in the world community and the Security Council? Do you think there will be a Security Council resolution extracted with respect to what's going on in Syria?
I'm not overly optimistic about the Security Council because of the Russian and Chinese veto threat, but at least there was some kind of a statement approved. 2,000 people so far have been slaughtered. It's not a crackdown, it's a slaughter going on in the streets. Yeah. 7,000 people have gone into exile, and you had an excellent editorial in this week's Jewish Light. In contrast to what's going on in Israel, whatever they're doing peacefully. They're not mowing down Israeli protesters in the streets of Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. It's a huge contrast.
And we also wrote about Egypt in that editorial, and even though the military is ostensibly largely in charge, they're not mowing anybody down either.
Correct. It is a hopeful sign.
It is a hopeful sign. Let's change to things totally non-politic. The U.S. now has a new poet laureate, and one who is Jewish, Phil Levin. We certainly have had our share of prominent Jewish American poets, but his background, his blue-collar background as an automaker, kind of harkens back to another famous Jewish poet, Emma Lazarus, whose words are inscribed on the Statue of Liberty about how we got here and what we did to pull ourselves up. What does this mean to you, having a Jewish poet?
First of all, I heard Peter Levine reciting his wonderful poem, What is Work, on NPR yesterday, and the entire poem is reprinted in yesterday's New York Times. Wonderful choice. You know, our very own Howard Nemiroff is from St. Louis, preceded him as Poet Laureate of the United States. It's a good choice, and it also reminds us a little bit of Eric Hoffer, the longshoreman philosopher, who wrote a little poetry in his day as well.
And it's interesting, while we have this juxtaposition in the news about big corporations and people being jobless, that this guy who really stems from a hardcore kind of lefty blue-collar background is chosen the poet laureate for the country. Kind of a bold statement.
No question about it.
Tell us what your Chronopedia is about this week.
This week it's about Joseph Pulitzer, who, by the way, I found out from my research, funded the establishment of the pedestal on which Emily Lazarus's famous poem, the Golden Lamp, the Golden Door, is inscribed. Pulitzer, all of his official biographies up until quite recently, said that he had a Jewish father and a Roman Catholic mother. But some research done by a Jewish guy in our own community named Jim Palmer, and some other research done in Hungary, has absolutely proven beyond any doubt that both of his parents, that his mother, whose name was Louise Berger, was also Jewish, was registered in her synagogue. Her parents were very active in that synagogue, and all of her internal documents had the word Jew stamped on it.
And he was very much trying to kind of straddle both worlds with his public declarations about having one Jewish parent and one non-Jewish parent?
There's also speculation that when he married Kate Davis, who was a distant cousin of Jefferson Davis, he, as a Union Army officer, wanted to soften the blow of saying, I'm only half Jewish.
Got it. And you have two books here about Pulitzer.
Yes.
One is by?
Swanberg, which was considered definitive. This contains the erroneous information. This is a more recent one by
Dennis
Bryan, Pulitzer, which contains a little bit more of the Jewish stuff. And then there's a new one out by a guy named Morris that contains more of the information that he actually had a bris on the 8th day after he was born, that his older brother went to Cheder. So he was about as Jewish as they come.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching once again. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and by then Bob will have another Cohnopedia online. Until then, thanks, Bob. Thanks to Aggie behind the camera, and Take care, everybody. Have a good week.